Hello everybody and welcome to my build video for the Magicka Sorc. So this is going to be the most recent version of Electrocutioner. This is going to be the third update on this build, and this would technically be for the Summerset patch, but actually it would work in the current patch, and I'm likely to change to it in the current patch. It's slightly better survivability, very marginally less damage, way more sustain, and it's finally got min-maxed CP for the current patch in Summerset as well. The CP, you'd want to go with my old setup there, so check out the old video. So for those who don't know what this build generally is about, this build is about using your Overload with your Pet Stun to combo for an absolutely enormous stack of damage. Now, because I'm on the PTS, I don't actually have anybody to show that combo with. So if you don't understand the combo when I try to explain it on my own, I would suggest jumping onto my previous video to see exactly how that combo works. I'll do my best to explain it, but it is very complicated to get. Now, keep in mind, if you A, don't know how to play Pet Sorc, and don't think you're going to be confident learning it, or B, are just not that experienced a player, this build will be hard to play. It's going to be a great learning curve for you, so do try stick it out and you'll get there, but don't expect great results instantly. When you master it, you're going to be unstoppable. This build absolutely destroys, be it in 1v1s, open world, you name it, but it is difficult to play. It's also going to be much easier to play if you're on PC than console, because there is a really good add-on that can help you with your pets called Pet Dismiss, which basically allows me to press one button to dismiss my pets. You won't have that on the console, and it can make it a little harder to control your pets. So, first things first, let's start with our sets. Now, sets have changed a bit, but what has not changed is neck potence. We're in 5 neck potents, all impen with one big triglyph. Everything else is going to be Magicka glyphed. Magicka is going to increase our shields, it's going to increase our pet damage, it's going to give us flat damage on the Overload. It's a win all round. And they're going to all want to be impen. A lot of people will say, why not use Defines, why not use Infused, why not use Well Fitted? Simple answer is, as a Sorc, you are always going to have some time where your shields are down. And this is such a common misconception. They're like, well, and if your shield's down, you're dead anyway. That's not true at all. Without impen, that's definitely true. But if you do have that impen, when your shields drop, and they will drop in fights, then you have your window to still survive, get them back up, and replace that weave. So I strongly, not even strongly, I definitely advise going that way. So that's going to give you your neck potence. Your next 5-piece set is going to be with Elegance. So you're going to run this on the jewellery and 2 swords on the front bar. On those swords, you are going to want to have a weapon damage and spell damage. And that's going to be on a Nirn-honed main hand. And then your offhand is going to be sharpened with any glyph of your choice, because it's not going to proc very often at all. I go for stamina still, because if it's desperate times, desperate measures, I may heavy attack for stamina. I'm going to proc that off glyph as well as my main glyph. Then I'll get the stamina return, so it's a bit more on your heavy attack. But whatever goes for you, it's really not going to have very much uptime. The elegant jewellery then is going to be stamina recovery, reduce spell cost, and Magicka recovery. You are not going to want to change that setup. It is definitely going to be best. The only thing that you could potentially play with is recovery instead of reduced cost, but it is going to be worse sustained, so it's your choice if you want to make that sacrifice. On the back bar, we're running an infused Master Ice Staff. This is going to have the Magicka steel, and it's going to help us sustain that a little bit more. It also obviously is going to help our reach, which I'll explain in a sec, and it is key that that's an Ice Staff. It cannot be a Fire Staff, it cannot be a Lightning Staff. If you don't have the Master Ice Staff, you're going to want to run an Elegant Ice Staff, again infused on the back bar, same glyph. It is going to make your sustain a lot worse because of that cost on the Ice Staff cast, but it will increase your damage a bit on your light sacks, which is definitely worth it next patch with the 5-piece on 4-piece. As it is in the current patch, you would only just get the Magicka bonus of the 4-piece, so it's a bit more damage, but it's still better than nothing. The change comes on our monster sets, and now we are running 2 Shadow Rend. You'll notice I'm running that stam recovery on the glyph, where I was running a Bloodspawn, and I've dropped the Doma House 1-piece to get that 2-piece of Shadow Rend. So this is really useful, because now in 1v1s, you're going to have this minor maim uptime very high. And even in groups, it does have an AoE attack. It is going to minor maim one of them, and it is just going to take that bit of control. But it also adds a nice little bit of dot damage. It's not a bad hitting thing. When it heavy attacks, it's not bad damage at all. So it does add up a lot in terms of your window of attack, and it's also going to help your defense. I would definitely advise getting this. And also, we are 7 light. We are not running a single heavy piece or a single medium. All of our skills are very expensive. Stamina is rife, so harness ain't going to save the day. You're going to need the sustain of 7 light. If you really want to YOLO it, you can try run with a heavy or a medium. But again, I would strongly suggest going for the lights all round. The extra resources is simply not going to be worth it in the case of this build. Our stats then, this is obviously all unbuffed. We are 43.3k Magicka, 16.3k health. That's going to be like 22k in Battle Spirit, and that's before pets. And then we are 10.3k stamina, more than enough because we have a decent stamina recovery. Just don't roll dodge more than once per potion and you'll be fine. Magic recovery is sitting at 2.2k. Now, that might sound low, that might sound high. It really comes down to your opinion. You've got to remember that we have 7 light behind that, so we have a lot of reduced cost. And we have that reduced cost glyph, so the reduced cost is great. And then spell damage sits on 2.1k. It's not going to matter if you can't one-shot in this build. Frankly, you're not going to one-shot anyone anytime ever because this has huge burst. Anybody who's seen my previous videos with this build or watches the stream will know that full well. So let the haters know because this build is deadly. Crit is at 32%, but we are using crit potions, so that is going to go up to 42%, sorry. And our crit resist is at 1.8k. We're not running much CP there. We're using the H-Nack Mundus, and we are using Clockwork Citrus Fillet Food for our sustain. Okay, so just to show those stats now on the overload bar, we are slightly higher on Magicka and slightly higher on stamina. Our stamina goes up to 11.1k, and our Magicka goes up to 46k on this bar. The magic recovery is going to go up a bit as well because of the passives. So that's also to keep in mind because this is where your kill is actually going to come from. Spell damage on the overload bar is sitting at 2.5k and it is glorious. Oh, that must be with a spell damage pot. That's why that's higher and that's why the recovery is higher. That makes sense. Okay, good. So, moving on to our skills, and I will do some explaining after this. On the dual-wield bar, we are using Ball of Lightning, not Streak. You don't want to stun. It is essential you don't stun. I'll explain that at the end. And it is great for survivability. It's going to take pressure off when you're moving around. I like this morph a lot more than Streak for this build. Other builds, I'd run Streak. This, definitely not. Endless Fury then for the Magicka still. And the Execute, this is going to be really valuable for generating your kills against tankier targets. You're not going to need it against squishy targets. They're going to die in a second. And then Hardened Ward for the big boy shield. And you can see a huge tooltip on there. 20.3k. Obviously, that's before Battle Spirit, but over a 10k shield is very, very high on that one. Then we are using Volatile Familiar. That is going to generate our stun. That is the most important skill of the whole build, apart from Overload. That is how this combo works. So that's a must-have. It's also going to add a bit of dot pressure. We're not building very high into actually increasing that dot, so there's not much CP to benefit the dot. In the end, it's not going to get the kill. It's just there for pressure and sustain the stun. And then we're running with Twilight because we're going to need that to support the Volatile. Otherwise, our Volatile's in a bit of trouble. When it dies, it can be a bit harder to keep it up. More importantly, it's also going to give yourself a heal. And not to mention that, it's actually a really great dot. I should have mentioned that before. But yeah, it's going to be key to keep yourself alive on that scamp. If the scamp dies, you're in trouble. Overload, obviously, is going to be ulti. You're going to want the morph that gives you your Magicka back. The other morph is terrible. On our back bar then, we are running Daedric Prey. So this is the other morph of Curse. It's going to increase our pet damage. And it is also going to give us that big boy burst when we time things right. And generally, it's just a great skill all round. Ice Reach, so this is going to give us our spammable DPS, a bit extra on the dot, and it's going to immobilize. That immobilize is nothing to underestimate. It's actually really great because that immobilize is going to make sure that you're going to be able to resummon your pets safely if they die. Because when our pets die, how are we going to resummon them? Well, the answer is, I don't know. But with Frost Reach, they're stuck. We can move away. Let's imagine our target is this dummy. With Frost Reach, move back a bit. He's now got a gap close. If it's a sword, kill streak short because we've moved. If it's a gap close, well, he's rooted, he can't. He's going to have to roll dodge, and by that time, your pet is already up. So it's a great way to help resummon your pets under pressure. Harness is going to be our secondary damage shield. You are going to want this morph. It does help a lot. If you really want to try and you're having a lot of problems with stamina classes, you can go Dampen. But because of the size of our front shield, I think you're all right with Harness, and it does help a lot in terms of getting your sustain up. Now, Dampen will be a massive shield because we get 30% more, and that would be even bigger than Harness. Hardened, it would be about 22k shield. So it is a great skill. Do I think it's worth it in this case? I don't think you need it. Again, we're going to run both the pets, same reason, but this time they are just there to keep them on the bar. And then our back bar ulti is now Temporal Guard. So if you're on the live server and you want to run this build, you're going to want to run Atronac or Barrier on this. Barrier for sustain, Atronac for backup pressure if you're in trouble. In the case of the Summerset patch, you are definitely going to want to run Temporal Guard. So this has two great uses as a Sorc. Firstly is the passive. While slotted, you gain minor protection. That is obviously incredibly strong. Minor protection is a brutal buff. It is a huge buff to your survivability on your back bar, and that's where your smaller shield is anyway. And it's also where you're going to be offensive apart from your burst. So that is going to help your survivability a lot. Secondly, this works brilliantly with streaks. So what I'm going to show you is going to imagine that we're under huge pressure. And we're also going to imagine that where those Mundises are, there's going to be a drop down a cliff. Now, obviously, I can't show this properly, but just imagine there is. So we've got the Zerg chasing us. What we're then going to do is we're going to spam streak like fucking crazy. We're going to get off. We're going to jump down the cliff, go one more time, weapon swap, bam. And we go all the way back. But more importantly, we've resetted all of the Magicka cost from those streaks. So suddenly, we are back at full Magicka despite burning through some very expensive streaks. It's a really great back ulti for Sorc, and it's giving us that protective damage buff. So, to quickly explain before we go on the CP how this combo works for those who may not seen it on the stream or may not have seen it in the previous videos. What we're going to do against our target is we're going to be shielded, etc, etc. We're going to be buffed with our pot, and we're going to set our pets on them with our control key, which I'll show you in a sec. We're then going to use our Scamp Morph, 2 attacks, be that a shield or an ability, a Curse, 2 more attacks, Fury, and then we'll go in the Overload. At that point, the NPC will get stunned, or the player will get stunned, and then we'll launch an Overload. And that Overload is going to be unblocked, and it is going to hit hard. And that is how you're going to generate the burst in general. So it is Scamp Pulse, 2 abilities, Curse, 2 more abilities, Fury, and then switch to Overload, throw the Overload. If your target seems pretty clued into that, very few people do react to that, but some extremely good players might get used to it. What you're going to want to do is change that up slightly. You're going to go Scamp, 2 abilities, Curse, but instead you're going to go 1 ability, Fury, Overload swap, and throw 2 Overloads. They'll block the first Overload, drop expecting you to swap, and the other Overload will connect with the unblocked burst. So that's how you're going to generate the burst there. Again, that's all I'm going to be able to show you because this is the PTS. I would suggest watching the previous build videos if you want to see exactly how that combo is so effective, or watch my Kobe video on the YouTube that was uploaded a couple of days ago, because that would also show this build in action, in actual fights. I always get asked that. Guys, my builds are always on my YouTube in action, in a montage, before or after build video. This one's already on there to a point in some duels. That's enough about the combo. I don't want to go on about that all day because it is explained in quite some detail by now, and I think a lot of you will be used to it. So let's go on to the CP. Now this is definitely min-maxed. As far as I'm concerned, you're just going to want to copy this. If you do change it, that's fine, that's up to you, but you are going to be costing yourself stats. So just keep that in mind. Green Tree, first of all, 56 in Warlord. This is going to be for our CC break, cheapen that stamina cost when we are running low stamina. 6 into Sprinter. So these are useful points. When you are getting chased by a group, and you're streaking, you're not going to want to spam streak non-stop unless that undo is ready. Then maybe you can. You're going to go streak, streak, maybe a third streak, and at that point you're going to sprint a bit until your next streak is ready. The cost save there, 4% for just 6 points, is very good. It's well worth putting the points in. Green Tree then, because we have a reasonable stamina recovery, nothing crazy, but a bit, we're going to put 56 into there to cheapen, to raise our stamina recovery that little bit. And then we also have 76 in Arcanist for Magicka recovery. We're stacking that to the highest tier. There's no point in not doing that. Next, we have 56 in Tumbling. This is for the roll dodge. You can afford it here and there. You don't want to go over the top of it, but you do have 900 stam recovery, which is more than just CC breaking. Just don't go too crazy on it, because obviously we do have a low max stam. If you want to roll dodge more, you could run some more triglyphs, but you are going to lose shield size and some damage there, which I don't think is worth it. So that's going to come down to preference. I would suggest just don't overall dodge. You don't really need to that much. Befoul and Shadow Ward are obviously irrelevant in this because we're not going to be blocking. No need for it. And Befoul, well, we're not running heal debuff. Blue Tree then, 56 in Elfborn. So this is going to increase our crit damage and crit heals. The crit heals is actually still useful. The Twilight heals a lot. It's like a breath of life. 56 in Elemental Expert for that flat damage boost. And 52 in Spell Erosion for the penetration. 66 in Master at Arms. And 20 in Thaumaturge. There are 2 changes you can make to the CP. Firstly, if you want to make a bit more dot pressure but a little less burst, you can take out 8 points for Spell Erosion and put them into Thaumaturge. You don't want to do the second one as well, but alternatively, you could also take points at Spell Erosion, 10 of those, and put them in Elfborn to put 66 here for 2% more crit damage. I think this is the better setup, but those are not bad either. So you're going to get a bit more sustained pressure by putting them in Thaumaturge, the 8 points there. Or you can get a bit more crit burst if you put it in Elfborn. Overall, I think this is the best setup. You don't want points in Blessed, you simply don't need it. Your healer's already very big, and it doesn't matter very often. Last but not least, Red Tree. So this is one of the few classes where I don't build Resilient very often, which is a great passive. In this case, we're not going to need it. With 56 in Ironclad, that is going to give us that direct damage reduction. Just the one measly point in crit resist, because we're going to need a lot of points spread out elsewhere. We're then running with 37 Hardy, 37 Elementifer, and 28 Fixed Skinned. You don't want to stack too hard and Fixed Skinned, because in the next tree in Summerset is a tree that you're going to need to put points in. And I'll explain this when I remake my Magicka and Nightblade videos, and also now. We are running 56 in Bastion for shield size, but where things get whack is Expert Defender. Next patch, light attacks hit hard, really hard. If you're a vamp and you get hit by a flame staff by any reasonable build, we're talking 5k crits. So reducing that damage by 20% is a massive, massive damage save for just 35 points investment, where we might otherwise reduce our dot damage by about 2% and elemental damage by 1% each. It's a huge difference. It is definitely worth the points next patch. I'm also not a vampire anymore. So some of you guys may have seen the original, which was a vamp. Same reason here. You are not really going to want to be a vamp next patch, in my opinion, on any class. Even the Templar, I've dropped it, because you are so susceptible to fire staff light attacks. But every light attack hits pretty hard in this patch. So that's why we're running that CP. I think that covers anything. One final time, because I always get asked it in the video. You're going to want to check out the previous videos. So there is a video, Overload New Meta, which is going to show you how this build works in action, and any of the previous build videos to see the combo explained in a bit more detail. I don't want to explain it too many times. And remember that this is obviously the Summerset patch, so there are a few changes in terms of CP. On the live server, you would run Atro back bar or Barrier back bar, and you would run those Expert Defender points elsewhere, and you could run Vamp. Good luck with the build. I hope that this will be beneficial to some of you guys. It is very, very strong. I don't lose very often in this build at all. And open world, it does work. One more thing to explain. So open world, I did explain this Pet Dismiss add-on. That basically allows you, it's simple. You just bind a key to Pet Dismiss. You click that and all your pets go and you can resummon. That's really, really useful if your pets bug out. They don't do it very often. They're working pretty well recently, but sometimes there'll be certain areas, especially resource towers, that they might just fall through the floor for no apparent reason, and you'll need to resummon them like that. But more importantly, you're going to want to go in controls. You're going to want to keybind something to command pet. And how that will work is I'll basically have to right click or left click to control the pet. So if I want to send the pet, I hold Y. Where the fuck is Y? I don't even know. I send the pet. Apparently, I can't get used to my keyboard. There you go. It's because this is a German keyboard I'm on. So that's how you send them over, and then the same, you can right click with the same and send them away. You can alternatively, if you're a console, just use a medium or heavy attack. So if I do a medium attack, if I do a light attack, you'll see they don't go. If I do a medium attack, the pets go. So that's how you can control them there. Obviously on the console, you won't be able to call them back, so you'd have to change them onto a different target for another medium attack, like so. On the PC, I can just control them. Now, good luck with the build. I hope that works out. The costume is something of Bedlam. I don't really know. Looks pretty ugly, but not as ugly as the gear. I'll see you guys in the next video. I will be re-releasing my Magicblade and my Magicka video, potentially even today.